My name is James Corsi, and I am the Executive Director of the Global Spaceport Alliance. Today is sort of bittersweet because it's the final webinar in our workforce development series, and it's going to focus on space career opportunities now and in the future. For GSA, we boast over 70 members and 30 spaceports as members around the world. We're on 5 different continents. And each spaceport has a different business plan and different business model and different requirements for typical workforce. So by linking in to GSA, you're going to get the benefit of an extremely large network of opportunities. I want to specifically also thank Jacobs for being the sponsor of this series. And now I'd like to introduce our hostess for today's session. It's Alice Carruth, and she is the driving force behind the groundbreaking T-Minus Space Daily podcast. She has a passion for unraveling the mysteries of the cosmos. Alice has carved a niche for herself in the world of space communications. And it's completely appropriate that she is our hostess because she was one of the driving forces that started GSA to work with Spaceport America on this workforce development series. So Alice, with that, please take us on.
Thank you so much, James. I really appreciate that lovely introduction. And yes, I am very much passionate about when it comes to workforce development and spaces. And this is going to be a really great conversation today. We're going to explore future careers in aerospace and talk to people that are working in both education and working in careers that are perhaps not traditional when it comes to the space industry. So this is a chance to really talk about what the future holds for people that want to either start their career in space from scratch or maybe move over from other adjacent career opportunities. So we've got a really great panel today. 4 different speakers that are going to walk us through what it is that they do and answer some questions. Use the chat in this presentation and I'll make sure I ask the panel throughout the conversation. We're going to start off with Tricia from Jacobs. Now, Tricia actually does a lot of work in master planning for spaceports and does things that, like architectural design. So Tricia, I'd love you to walk us through what it is that you do at Jacobs Technology and talk us a little bit about what your career looks like as well.
So good morning, everyone. My name is Tricia Quinn, and thanks for the warm introduction. I do work at Jacobs. I'm a principal in their building and infrastructure group. And then Jacobs is an international, we have a lot of offices nationally. We do architecture and engineering. I'm located in Orlando, Florida. I specialize in the aerospace market sector for design, architecture, and master planning. And I wanted to share with you a recent project that we did in Titusville, Florida. It was a master plan for a spaceport. And if you can see my screen, you can tell that this master plan is showing the end state of what this spaceport, called Exploration Spaceport, is going to look like in about 10 to 20 years. The opportunities for future aerospace companies coming to relocate here is great. There's a lot of opportunities for growth. Anything that you see here across the campus that might be in a white box represents future growth at this airport. Now, this spaceport is actually strategically located next to Kennedy Space Center, Cape Canaveral, and is reasonably close to Patrick Space Force Base. Now, what makes this an interesting place for aerospace companies to want to come relocate to is that it's got located next to roads, the railway. It's got air with the runways that exist at this airport, and it's close to the seaport as well. And so that's really important to spaceports because people and things that need to come to and from the spaceport needs multiple mechanisms of transportation. So a lot of companies that want to move here could either be in a manufacturing or processing capacity where you might be working for a company within a building that has high base space because you're building large items. It might be components of an actual rocket. There could be R&D space where you're doing research and development for different parts of the aerospace industry. We even carved out a little space for an engine test stand. And also the future right now is telling us this spaceport could have a terminal. Like an airport near you, you have a terminal for takeoff and landing. This is talking about point-to-point takeoff and landing in the future that would address hyper and supersonic craft that will be getting around the world and around the country a lot faster than we do in our traditional aircraft. And so a lot of new technology and a lot of new companies are coming to a spaceport near you. And that's what makes a spaceport that's embedded within a regional airport so interesting, is because it can do both for your region. What we were talking about with our client is that the surrounding Titusville area, the impacts of a spaceport are great. So if you're talking about, oh, a spaceport's growing, but the town around it's going to be impacted positively by all sorts of industries and all sorts of job opportunities. So if at current you're studying areas within what the concept of STEAM, science, technology, engineering, arts, and math, you're headed in the right direction. But if you're also interested in studying different types of areas of college or trade school, there are opportunities to work at a spaceport in the military. You could be part of a DoD agency. You could do manufacturing and processing. If you're into science, you can be in research and development for pretty much any aspect of aerospace. But because a spaceport has a positive impact on the town around it, there's also opportunity to have a business background, to get into business development. There's logistics and transportation, and most importantly, space tourism, which is a great opportunity for any small spaceport. Now, for education, you can be a teacher and you can work at a spaceport too, but a lot of universities are beginning to want space or facilities at a spaceport. So students like yourself could be going to college or graduate school while also having internship opportunities at local aerospace companies. One of the stats that we came across while we were doing a market survey for our master plan was that in the year 2040, this global space market is going to be worth about $1 trillion. That means between now and 20 years, the global space market is going to double. And that means excellent opportunities for all of you that want to enter into the aerospace industry. What's happening today is we see a lot of the percentage is within satellites and government programs like NASA. But in the future, there's going to be new industries and applications that are up to you to come up with different ways to get us and items into space.
Thank you so much, Tricia. What a really great and exciting thing to think about. Preparing and planning for future launch areas. What an interesting area. We will come back and have some questions for you coming up. I would love to introduce our next guest, which is Ken Davidian. I'm sorry, I just really ruined your surname there. But please introduce yourself and tell us about the International Space University. I think a lot of people know what ISU is, but probably don't realize just how much it's doing here in the US because they focus mainly on its European counterpart. Talk us through what's available with ISU.
Sure. Thank you very much, Alice. It's Davidian, by the way. And that's a common mispronunciation. No problem, though. Hi, everybody. My name's Ken. I've worked in the space industry since 1983. I spent a number of years, almost 2 decades at NASA Lewis, which turned into NASA Glenn Research Center in Cleveland. I spent a couple years in private industry, and then I jumped over to the FAA Office of Commercial Space Transportation for a dozen years. Recently retired from that and just recently became VP of North America for the International Space University. As was mentioned, ISU has got a permanent campus in Strasbourg, France, but it was actually started here in the US. And so we've had a North American presence all this time. However, it's just been revitalized recently. I wanted to mention, just to touch on the point about how the space industry is more than just spaceports, launch vehicles, and in-space vehicles. There is so much more. And you saw on the previous chart how it goes from everything upstream all the way up to the raw materials of people and capital and minerals and metals, land, labor, and capital, basically the 3 fundamental raw materials, all the way down to the downstream, which is the business development, as was mentioned, the education, the customer service, hospitality, all this, and then all the way actually to markets that are even been demonstrated already, such as taking individuals to space station or into orbit for tourism, or the prospective, the potential markets, such as fuel depots and all these other types of exotic things that we've been able to imagine, but we haven't turned into markets yet. And so the space industry is, again, the core is very constrained to spaceports, launch vehicles, and in-space vehicles, but there's so much more. So any business support service could be applied to the space industry. There's just a lot of things out there. So I think the idea that I'm not an engineer, I can't be in the space industry, I think, we should make that something of the past and start looking forward where everybody can be a part of the space industry. Let me talk about International Space University for a couple seconds. It was started in 1987 in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and in 1992, it opened a permanent campus in Strasbourg. Like I said, they've been running professional development programs and academic master's programs ever since, those early days, 3.5 decades ago. I was lucky enough to go as a participant to the second, what was called the summer program at the time in 1989. But this year, we just last week started our 37th summer program, I think it is, in Houston, Texas, on the campus of Rice University. This is an 8-week program that changes the lives of the participants. They come out of that 8-week program with an incredible international network across the space industry that would take decades to build if it was done in the normal traditional way of just going to conferences and meetings and building a reputation. ISU is built on the 3 I's. The first is international. The second is interdisciplinary. When we look at a problem or when we approach problems, we approach it from an interdisciplinary perspective, including the space, physical sciences, life sciences, engineering, policy and law, business management, satellite applications, and representing that A in STEAM, the humanities, the arts. And so all these different perspectives have all their own different lingos and all their different terminology, and they have different cohorts, and getting these different cohorts to talk together, to learn each other's language and be able to look at a problem from multiple perspectives. That's kind of what ISU is about. ISU currently has about 5,600 alumni around the world, 110 or so countries. And our programs range from an 18-month program, which is a master's space science, which is accredited in Europe and requires an individual thesis. There's a 12-month version of the master's program with an internship. And then we have a lot of professional development programs ranging from the 8-week SSP Space Studies program. There's a 5-week version of that in the Southern Hemisphere, typically in Australia. And then we have a number of 1-week refresher courses, executive space courses, crash courses that we've been offering. And we most recently, we're right now in the process of generating an online version of some of these shorter courses. So there's a huge array of opportunities to learn about the different disciplines, about the different nations that are participating, and then also getting acclimated to the different cultures. It's a very, very exciting time to be in the space industry because there are so many new types of individuals coming into it. When I started my career, of course, it was engineering, and NASA hired a bunch of us in the early 80s. But since then, there have been a wide variety of folks coming in, and again, like every other discipline, they bring their own norms, their own customs, their own language to the table, and we're having fun learning how to communicate with each other, learning how to work with each other, whether it's to support government exploration missions or commercial missions that are being conducted by private industry for whatever purpose. So with that, I will yield my time and say thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ken. I promise I won't ruin your name again.
No worries.
But I think what you just hit on was so important. How different the careers are in aerospace. I've only been working in it for 6 years, and I've seen a huge change even in that time. So I can imagine your insights are going to be really great when it comes to telling these students about all the different future careers that are going to be coming up as well. So with that, we're going to introduce Kaci Heins, who's from Limitless Space, and tell us a little bit more about what it is that they do over there.
So hi everyone, my name is Kaci Heins. I'm the executive director of the Limitless Space Institute, which is a nonprofit based out of Houston, Texas. And we are focused on going incredibly fast. So when we're talking about the future, that's what we're all about, especially if you see a spacecraft like this or one that's behind me, thinking that it's science fiction, but it's actually something we're focused on turning into reality. So we are here to inspire and educate the next generation to travel beyond the solar system and support the research and development of those technologies. What that means is we help fund research being conducted all over the world through grants and fellowships. So solar sails, laser propulsion, nuclear to electric propulsion, and even warp drive. So again, things that seem like science fiction, we are helping to invest to turn into reality. because who knew we'd be talking on cell phones? I know when I was a little kid, our phone was connected to a wall, and now we can talk on smartwatches. We have these satellite constellations. It's just incredible where we're at. And so that's where we're looking to the future. What does the next 50 to 100 years look like? Looking at nuclear fusion propulsion, fission propulsion, knowing the engineering, not knowing the engineering. And that's where the students are so incredibly important, and where you see yourself in these future jobs is that we're going to need you in these future jobs because we need these problems solved, the physics part, the engineering piece. And when we get to breakthrough, so if we want to travel to our nearest star, Proxima Centauri, you know, with nuclear fission, we're looking at thousands of years, fusion, hundreds of years. But if we can get to breakthrough, the space drives, the wormholes, space warps, that's where the physics is unknown and the engineering is unknown. We still have to figure that out. Just like if you were inspired by movies or Star Wars or Star Trek, all the things, it just takes that imagination, that drive, and we can find those solutions. So again, we're really focused on the academic research components to help us get to the future of space exploration. But another big piece of this is starting in the classrooms all over the globe. So we have the Limitless Global Educator Program, where we have teachers, as you can see, across the planet. We're hoping to expand even further into more countries in the coming year, where it starts with the teacher. If you have a passionate, excited teacher, you're going to have passionate and excited students. But space is not always at the forefront of what's in classrooms in the United States or anywhere in the world. So exposing teachers and helping them to see the connections, the real world connections, to help build confidence and to help put these new ideas in front of students is what's going to help inspire them. So that's the future generation, because right now we're laying the groundwork and then they're going to take over from here. So again, you can see in these pictures, we've got kiddos and teachers. They're learning, they're invested, they're excited, because there are no limits. And that's what's really exciting about the Limitless Space Institute. If you can dream it, work hard, be a part of the mission, then absolutely you can do it. So I'm excited to answer any questions you may have down the road, and I will stop from here.
I think we've already got one in the chat, which we will definitely address when it comes to it. I will get to it, Kaci. Thank you so much. Talking about teaching the teachers, this brings a great opportunity to bring in Liz Kennick from Teachers in Space, that does a lot of education for educators in a slightly different area. So Liz, I'd love you to talk us through what it is you do at Teachers in Space for the
Sure.
people.
Okay. Hi. Yeah. So we are focused right now on helping teachers get the ability to work in space. And we're doing that starting with CubeSats, helping them do CubeSat emulators that can be flown on balloons and on planes. And then we also fly more realistic CubeSats on suborbital rockets. And we have our third actual orbital satellite launching toward the end of this month. So that's super exciting. This is Firefly Aerospace. You can see the rocket in pieces here. This is inside their assembly building. And it's a video that I don't have time for today, but a lot of the stuff is available on our website. We just went and integrated the satellite that will launch with them later this month. This is a typical example of what we teach when teachers come to our workshops. We do them every summer in Las Cruces, New Mexico, and it looks like we'll be doing that for the next 5 years. So we're really excited to have a home where we can do this. Teachers come from all over the US and also from other countries, and they learn to build a 1U version of a CubeSat. We do a balloon mission, get it back. They work with the data from that. We do glider flights. The teachers get to go, each one of them gets a glider lesson with one of the experiments that we're learning to build. We look at the data from that. And then later we give them a year of support in the classroom, working with their students to design experiments, which we will fly for them on balloons on the Perlin stratospheric glider, suborbitally with Blue Origin. And a team of teachers every year get to take the experiments on 0G. And now we have just found a couple of sponsors and are working hard to be able shortly to announce how it is that we're going to begin the space flights. These are some examples of the 1U CubeSats that can be built. This is popular with elementary students, middle school and high school. You can see the Perlin glider. you can see a balloon mission. This is a typical wiring diagram, starting out with a 2 dosimeter experiment where one gets wrapped in radiation protection and one doesn't. And this is an easy experiment to do. You get good, interesting data back that you can work with. And so this flies on just about every kind of launch vehicle that we use. And it will be on that orbital satellite that's going up. There are lessons on our website, tis.org, how to retrieve this data coming back from the satellite so that you can work with it too. Students learning to design and then actually perform the circuitry for these Arduino-based experiments, the type of data they get back, the zero-G flights, an example of planning out the activities parabola by parabola for 30 parabola zero-G flight, a video of that, more data, the 2U type of experiment that flies with Blue Origin. This is a standard that we established with a Flight Opportunities grant from NASA in 2019, and we have a couple more launches coming up with Blue for these classroom experiments. So what's happening as a result of this is that the teachers are getting really comfortable leading their students in asking questions, thinking of the types of experiments that will answer those questions, designing them, and then working with the resulting data. They're even starting high school clubs that then become run by the 11th and 12th graders, and the teachers work to identify the 8th graders that when they get to high school can then join the club and help to take it along. Here's a timeline from Maine where they started planning for the Blue Origin flight. That got delayed for a while, so they switched to working with the stratospheric glider. And after that came back, they got the Blue Origin data as well. And so that was a very good learning experience for everybody. Lots and lots of data back from these flights. Lots of teachers actually building their CubeSats. And yeah, so we even got to go inside Spaceport America and see Unity getting built. So lots of people helping us. We're delighted to have so much industry support. And what we find now is that we hear from these rocket companies what new contracts they have, where they're expanding. So we were just at Firefly a week ago integrating our 3U orbital CubeSat, and they said, did you hear? We got 25 new launch contracts from Lockheed. So I came home, I sat down to work on these slides, and I checked LinkedIn, which is my favorite source of information. And sure enough, pages of new job, mostly engineering jobs at Firefly, because they're primarily a manufacturer and a launch provider. Then I checked Blue Origin because we do so much with them. 8 pages on LinkedIn of jobs at every level, listing the salaries. You can read them, see what the requirements are. You can see the different levels for the same type of job, from lead to manager to senior manager, where those are located, what the requirements are. So it's a really exciting time in aerospace, and it's not just engineering anymore.
Thank you, Liz. I really appreciate
Sure.
you saying that. I think, it's one of the things that we've already seen in the questions in the chat is, what are the opportunities out there? Because people still think it's just purely engineering. And I have to say, I'm a liberal arts major, and
Me too.
I work in the space industry just like Liz and others. And this is a really good opportunity for us to bring in Rani Bush, because you mentioned that you're going to be going out to Spaceport America and doing the tour. Rani Bush is here from Spaceport America. She's a business operations manager over there. Rani, I'd love for you to tell us a little bit about the spaceport and how you ended up in the space career.
It's exciting times here because the Spaceport Cup starts next week. So the students are already coming in. They're going to be at the convention center Monday and Tuesday, then launching their rockets Wednesday through Saturday. So I have to admit, I'm a little bit on a high right now, getting ready for that. But I've been working here at the spaceport myself for a year and a half. And again, we're like the first commercially built spaceport out in the middle of southern New Mexico. And, one of our anchor tenants is Virgin Galactic, but we have many other companies coming, some doing testing, some doing high altitude aircrafts. And so one of the things, and I love even how, so James started off with, spaceports do a lot of things. And one of the things that we're always continuing to try to build is, like, say, our STEM outreach as well. And I like sort of the conversation as well, because, back, I'm a little bit older than most people think I am, but I had wanted to be an astronaut, got into the Naval Academy, wanted to do engineering. It didn't work out for me. I went away and did many other things, and I ended up getting a master's in sociology. Well, fast forward about 40 years later, here I am at the spaceport. I got this job as a business operations manager. I really do the internal affairs, but I work with all our departments, our engineers, our business development people, just trying to help because the spaceport is a big operation and needs a lot of different types of people. We also have our, our site operations who maintain the spaceport and also help us to grow and do the infrastructure. And so I think when you start to think about jobs in this industry, you really do have to expand. We need all types of jobs. And I'm just thrilled that I was able to come and, like I said, with a sociology background, work in the space industry. And I think the most important thing is that, sort of when you figure out what your passion is, don't give up. I had seen in the chat a little bit, somebody had applied and didn't get the job. When I first moved to New Mexico, I was applying to all these different space companies. Yeah, I think I had 8 different rejections just from space companies. But when the right position came along and I had what was needed, I just was able to take up that opportunity. But again, it's because I didn't give up and I kept networking, I kept volunteering. I love being part of the space festival that they have down there. So again, this workshop is great. The series is great. I'm sorry this is the last one, but at Spaceport America, we're just continuing to move forward. And we're going to be excited to have all these students here next week.
Thank you, Rani. I really appreciate that. And I'm going to throw that question as well over to Tricia, because I feel like your career trajectory is different to most people. And again, this chat's been talking very much focused about engineering and science backgrounds, but you're an engineering architect. It's a kind of a different area altogether that people don't associate with space. Could you tell me a little bit about your background and how you ended up in this opportunity that you're in?
Yeah, I practice architecture and design and master planning, as I had mentioned earlier. And what we focus on is getting to know our aerospace clients who need facilities to conduct their business. And doing a master plan means kind of looking at a campus-wide perspective for our client, that is TCAA, the Titusville Airport Authority, that got a license for a spaceport. And by getting into master plan with them, I get to know how businesses are run within aerospace because I need to get to know my client even better than sometimes they know themselves, so that they can say, hey, we need a 400,000 square foot processing facility at the spaceport. And so within architecture and engineering, from a master planning and facilities perspective, you can be an architect, you can be an engineer. We need all of the above to design not just campuses, but also specific facilities. Now, I have a varied background. You can check me out on LinkedIn. I have a background in design and architecture. I have a master's degree in architecture and design. I also have a master's degree in clinical and neuropsychology. So I have a background in healthcare. I also have a finance degree as a bachelor's degree. So my background has kind of been well-rounded to bring me to understand how to help my clients run their businesses through their physical spaces. And in aerospace, everything is developing right now. And so just to have the opportunity to develop and design a spaceport is insanely awesome. So that when you have just different backgrounds, it all leads to your passion. So I have a passion for aerospace. So you can have a business background. You can have a liberal arts background. You can do anything that you can think of, because spaceports are businesses as well as aerospace markets.
Absolutely. And I think you've absolutely hit the nail on the head there. You can have whatever background, but passion is key to everything. And doing your research, knowing what you're talking about. I've taken very complex engineering problems and figured out how to simplify them and communicate them in a way that hopefully most people can then understand, because that's what it is. Problems we're solving here in space. And I think that'd be a really good opportunity for me to bring in Ken to talk about how you train people for the industry when it comes to ISU, because it is the industry standard. It has been for a very long time to be able to set people up into the space industry. But what is it you do to prepare them? What kind of courses are available?
Well, so ISU has a multidisciplinary set of curriculum. For example, at the SSP right now, the participants are going through 3 weeks and about 54 hours of core lectures in the 7 disciplines I mentioned. And I think, everybody comes to ISU with their own expertise or their own set of experiences. Some have more expertise, some have less, some have worked in the industry a long time, some have not even gotten into it yet. They're trying to get a job. Everybody's got their own unique set of skills. And we do cover sort of equally, like I said, anything from the physical life and engineering part of sciences to the business development, the policy law, and the humanities and the satellite app stuff. So we sort of try to blend all this together. One of the things that I think a lot of programs do, not just ISU, but ISU focuses on very closely, again, is that international and intercultural part, which are now you're moving toward the soft skills, right? Yeah, math and science and all that sort of stuff is sort of perceived as a hard skill. But once you start getting into talking to other people that are not familiar with your jargon, that are not even familiar with the theory of what you're doing, I have no idea what's going on in terms of the physiology of an astronaut or somebody, but I can talk to a doctor, and you learn their lingo, you learn how to communicate. So it's a lot of it is the soft skills. And this is something which the business world, well, the neoclassic economic perspective is saying there's got to be a return on investment and profit. What's the result of these soft skills? And it's very hard to measure, but we're people. I mean, this gets back to the sociological kind of perspective, especially when you're talking about commercial space. It's about the people now. It's not about the science. And so you've got to be able to talk to people. What you provide there in terms of taking a complex concept, an engineering or scientific concept, and then translating it into something that a 20-year-old can understand, a 15-year-old, a 10-year-old. I'm thinking of my ChatGPT prompts here. You need to bring it down to levels using words and terminologies that other people can understand. And when you sort of have to do that when you're in an interdisciplinary world, because when you're talking to a lawyer, and you've got an astrophysicist, and they're having a discussion, they need to be able to talk to each other in a similar language. So developing those soft skills, I think, is one of the important things. And for 8 weeks, at least in the SSP and during all the other programs, these are the skills that we end up practicing. So communication and things like that.
Absolutely key in every kind of career. I've found enough people, and that's certainly what the Spaceport America Cup encourages with the student teams, is to be able to talk about what it is they're doing. It's one thing to be able to come up with an idea, but if you can't communicate it, you're never going to get further in your career. And I actually really don't like the terms soft skills and hard skills, because it implies that some are easy and some are not, when actually equally they're both as difficult to do and do well. So I think the implication there, I completely understand what you're saying, is those two, what we know as hard and soft, but really you need to have both for everything.
And you're absolutely right there. And in fact, there's I've done a total 180 on that. I had the popular conception that math and science is hard, and those people taking the easier courses like sociology and business and things, those are easy. I'm going to go the hard route. Now I'm 180 degrees from that. All you have to do is learn math, and now you've got the aptitude, you've got the sciences. Trying to understand people, number one, and trying to understand large groups of people, super complicated. And if you want to work on a hard problem, that's the way to go. I mean, so personally, that's my own personal opinion.
Absolutely. And if you look at all of the companies that have done particularly well over the years, it's those that are able to communicate their ideas that have really been the ones that have progressed further. If you've got the great idea and you're not able to talk about it, trust me, you're not going to make it very far. Kaci, I have a really quick question for you to be able to talk about why you focus on moving your career over from education, which I know you put in the chat, into space. Why is it you think space is so important, and why is it you try and get educators to understand that?
That's a great question. It's kind of a unique story in that when I was in teaching, I hated teaching space. I grew up in a small town in Southern Illinois with coal mines and cornfields, and space was never communicated in any way, shape, or form. But then when I got in the classroom, the kids would ask a million questions, and I'm like, I don't know the answer to this. I have no background in this. I have no exposure. But then I got accepted to go to Honeywell's space camp for educators. And so I got to go to space camp as a 28-year-old, no background, and I would just nerd it out. It was the coolest thing to see the real world application of science and math and teamwork, because there were teachers from all over the world. I'm like, this is awesome. I don't want a glass of Kool-Aid. I want the fire hose. I want all of this now. And so the last, oh my gosh, that was 12 years ago. So in 12 years, I've just immersed myself. I've become very, very passionate. And so I did everything in the classroom related to space, and my kids just absorbed it. They loved it. I was excited. They were excited. We sent experiments to the space station, high-altitude balloons, zero-G flights. And now that I've kind of worked my way into the nonprofit sector and leading this organization, it's very exciting because I know where a lot of teachers are right now, where they maybe don't have that exposure, that confidence or experience to say, okay, let's take a little bit of space, but let's make it really fun and exciting and engaging. And so they feel confident, put it in front of our future workforce. And so there's definitely no limits to what you can do. You can get on this crazy space, rocket launch whenever you want in life. It's never too late. But definitely our mission right now is to try to get it in front of teachers, to put it in front of kids that are going to take us hopefully here one day.
I love that. I mean, space is definitely inspirational. You don't have to spend 2 minutes with a group of students to get them to understand we live on a planet that we know very little about anything outside of our basic atmosphere. We don't even know much about our own ocean, let alone what's going on in the universe around us. And I think most students instantly connect to space being something inspirational. They don't even have to be wanting to do it as a career. So I love that. Liz, I'd love to be able to talk to you about prepping educators for future careers in space, because just like Kaci mentioned, I came from the UK. I knew nothing about space. I don't even remember it being taught to me in a classroom when I was growing up, let alone the idea of commercial space, given that I graduated many, many years ago. How do you prepare educators you're working with for the careers that we don't even know what's going to happen in the next 10, 20 years?
Yeah, so the number one thing is to inspire their curiosity. And most teachers love to learn, right? They teach because they love learning. So if you show them, look at this new world that's opening up. Here are companies that are already working. I remember when SpaceX was doing their test launches in 2012, and we had a workshop going with teachers, and we were watching, and that was one of the ones that exploded. Some of my friends at SpaceX were chagrined, but the teachers said the students loved it. That's what got the students excited, was seeing these things blow up, and it made them care and follow and start rooting and wanting to see the success. We were also there at Mojave when there was a drop test of Virgin's earlier spaceship, and we saw the white knight come flying down the runway and take off, and the spaceship come down. So when the teachers get to be part of this, instead of being told only astronauts, only rock stars, only the most special people get to go to space, you can actually be involved in space and your students can work in space. That really encourages the teachers to take that back to the students. I think the number one inspiration for them is when we get to go inside any of the rocket companies and they meet the interns. So when they see young college students interning, these students are only a year or two older than the high school students, and the teachers realize that their very students could be doing this in a year or two.
I love that. I think that's a really great way of saying, inspiring the next generation also means inspiring our generation, people that are then going to pass that along. I think it's important for everybody in the aerospace industry to remember that actually we all play a role in promoting space to people around us and making sure that they understand the value of it. I saw in one of the chats the questions about what's coming up next week. And Rani, I'd really love you to talk us through the Spaceport America Cup, because I feel like it's a really good opportunity to talk about how all of this comes together. This is a really great competition. It's the world's largest intercollegiate rocket engineering competition, but students aren't always rocket engineers. They get people from business backgrounds. They've encouraged people with media backgrounds to come and film the teams this year. They're thinking about people working from business development who are able to raise money and funding. But can you tell us about the Spaceport America Cup competition that's coming up next week? Because I know you've answered it in the chat, but I'd love for you to share with everybody.
Absolutely. More like sort of what's going to happen next week is what you're talking about. And what's great is, like you were saying, is like you have these teams. We have over 120 teams from 20 different companies or 20 different countries. And, but I think we're expecting about 1,700 students. But again, this is something they've been working on for years. Some of the teams, they've started their designs and everything for years. All the teams come in, they check in at our convention center here in Las Cruces on Monday, and they have to go through a series of safety requirements to make sure that the rockets are ready to fly. First here in Las Cruces, but I think one of the really exciting days is on next Tuesday, because at the convention center itself, all the students are going to display both their rockets and their payloads, because every rocket that goes up has some type of payload. So I love what Alex was saying, is that it's just not about the rockets itself. They need the students who are with science, are, and doing other types of things to help with the payload. And again, I mean, can you imagine if you're a team coming from Turkey, how much that's going to cost? And so the teams have to work really hard to, get the sponsors, get the money to come here. So again, a team is made up of many types of students, maybe the ones who come, that actually are able to come to the competition are the ones, that are working on the rockets or on the payloads. But again, it takes many hands to make these rockets go. And so Tuesday is an amazing day. I love it because you can just walk around, talk to the different teams, feel their enthusiasm about what they've been working on and what these rockets are amazing. The payloads are amazing. And so Tuesday is wonderful. But then Wednesday through actually Saturday morning is when they actually, go out to the spaceport itself and then have a chance to actually launch the rockets. And there's nothing more exciting than a rocket launch, but they do have to go through a series out when they're at the site, again, safety checks, make sure everything's ready with the rockets before they're allowed to go out, and put them on sort of the pads for them to go up. And it's just amazing to see when, the rockets go up, these students are so excited and it's just, you can almost taste their excitement, which is amazing. And then we end Saturday night with, sort of awards, because it is a competition. And so there's many awards. And what I love about, because again, sort of we do this in partnership with ESRA, which is the Experimental Sounding Rockets Association, which is an amazing organization. They have so many volunteers judging the students' rockets, doing everything out there as well. And so on Saturday night, you get to see these students be rewarded for all their hard work. But they have, what I love is that there's some awards that deal with, sort of like, the teams besides just the rockets themselves, sort of their teammanship, how well they helped out, and all the points that they get for these rockets. It's, other things like that as well. So it's just a wonderful event, all the way, starting Monday through next Saturday.
Absolutely. And if anybody's interested in finding out more about the competition, there is a live stream on the Experimental Sounding Rocket Association on YouTube. I will be presenting that Monday through Friday next week. So we encourage everybody to go on to that. And one thing I do want to really mention is it's also a really good recruitment opportunity. So a lot of the chat I've seen so far are people that are looking about, where can we go and find opportunities to be hired? The Spaceport America Cup is sponsored by massive companies, and they come out to the competition and recruit directly from the teams. And they're not always looking for the best of the best. It's that team spirit, that opportunity to work together to overcome problems. And there are a lot of CATOs, catastrophes after takeoffs, as we call them, or other people know them as RUDs, explosions that do happen. That doesn't necessarily mean the teams are eliminated. It means it's an opportunity for them to learn from their mistakes. And that's what the judges are looking for. They're looking for people that come up with the bright ideas, problem solve, work together as a team. And I think that's a really important thing for people to talk about. And one of the other chats that came up that I think is a really good opportunity for me to throw to Tricia again is companies that are hiring. Jacobs is a massive company. Could you give us a bit of kind of a bigger angle of Jacobs as an opportunity and what kind of career opportunities there are working with a company like Jacobs?
Yeah, thank you. I did DM, somebody was asking about Jacobs and interviewed, and thank you so much for interviewing with Jacobs. So Jacobs is a massive company. I think we have about 60,000 people worldwide, and we have a lot of different specialties. Now in aerospace, say if you want to be an EE, you could be an electrical engineer in Jacobs Building and Infrastructure, the group I'm in, which does a lot of various types of projects with different types of clients, even outside of aerospace. If you're aerospace only focused, we do have a group called Critical Missions that deals with working as an embedded group in NASA out of the Cape and doing different things in Huntsville, across the country, a lot of different NASA sites. So if you're an engineer, you can work on a lot of different projects at Jacobs. You can try a lot of different groups. If you want to try a little bit of aerospace, but you might also want to get into a different aspect, Jacobs is big enough that you could apply to us and we can give you a varied background and a set of experiences. So it's not just aerospace, but of course that's our passion.
Yeah, absolutely. Ken, how is it you prep your students when they graduate from ISU? They've obviously come away with some really great qualifications, but where do you even start them when it comes to finding careers? Because I think this is really important, how do they go and find the jobs? Where do they even start their looks?
Well, that's a great question, and it's super individually oriented. I mean, I was thinking about this because for me, going to university or going to college and getting education is always about opening my blinders, making me see the world as a bigger place. So to me, whereas versus, for example, my wife, going to college was about getting a job. So, I mean, so there's these different perspectives of what education is for. And to be honest with you, ISU does a lot of professional development. We are here to help you, develop you professionally so you can either continue on in your career or break into the career of your choice. And so, again, it's the philosophy of ISU is very different. We don't say you're going to be an engineer or you're going to be a social scientist and we're going to teach you everything you need to do for that. You come in with your experiences and we want to augment it with this, multi-dimensional kind of perspective of the space industry. And what we're finding is, at least my observation is, 40 years ago, it was scientists, engineers, the almighty astronauts, going up to the cathedral of the space station, flying in the glorified, limousine of the space shuttle kind of thing. But, nowadays there's so many people coming in and it's more a reflection of society in general. It's not going to be this, engineering or scientific elite. It's everybody. And so, we're seeing even not only are we seeing this influx of business, kind of augmenting the NASA and the scientific world, but we're also seeing an influx of military, right? So the military aspect is coming in now as well, for better or for worse. And so there are a lot of opportunities. And so how do you prepare somebody to do all of that or to go in any direction that might be specific for them and unique for them? And so this is kind of taking more of the inch deep and a mile wide approach, saying, hey, listen, here you're going to, some places you can go and you go a mile deep and an inch, wide. Here, we're going to take the other approach and just give you a broader understanding so that, basically you can derive answers. We're not going to teach you how to go get the job as a double E. We're going to provide you the tool to get whatever job you think you can, will interest you. And believe it or not, your interests are going to change over your life. So you might be an engineer today and you might be a social scientist, a decade from now. So, I think getting so for me, this is where seeing the world as a broader place is a lot more interesting of a story rather than just checking the box to go get a job. But both are important. Don't get me wrong. So, we try the broad and, shallow approach.
I think that's really key. We do change careers multiple times throughout our lifetime because careers change. As I say, when I graduated some 20 years ago, there wasn't a commercial space industry. And now all of a sudden I work as a podcaster, which again didn't exist in commercial space. It's kind of amazing to think what could happen in the next decade and 20 years when these students are going off into their careers as well. Kaci, I'd love to get your perspective, obviously working with a lot of educators around the world. How are they approaching, creating jobs and workforce development internationally? Because I think we've got quite a few people that are watching now that are international, and everyone still focuses so much on the US, but there is so much going on elsewhere as well.
Absolutely. And not everyone realizes that this market is exploding, the space market. And like Ken said, it's the broad approach. We need everybody to be a part of the mission. It can't just be the US or specific countries going it alone. We have to be able to work together. And so with our Global Limitless Educator program, we spend a year with these teachers. It's a hybrid program. We meet with them virtually. We bring in subject matter experts virtually every month. And then we bring them to Houston to immerse them in Space City, touring behind the scenes, getting to meet speakers one-on-one, to show them where all the pieces connect and having those aha moments, and then taking that excitement back into the classroom. But for us, especially with the hybrid piece, we have teachers in Nigeria, Brazil, Mexico, Philippines, across the United States and the UK. It's really, with our curriculum, showing them the different jobs that we've talked about today, showing how space can be integrated across the curriculum, whether you're teaching music, art, math, science, computer science. It doesn't matter, because we need all those pieces to come together. Just school can sometimes be siloed into, here's math class, here's science class. We show them how to bring it all together, the reading, the writing, the math, the communication piece, absolutely critical. And we go over that in our course as well. So we have to start bringing that to more classrooms. We're trying to expand that, but it's literally with like the teachers in Nigeria. Space is not always at the forefront of just the news or anything in general. They're just starting to have this presence. So with the Nigeria Space Research and Development Agency, gotta always get them all right. But showing them that they're starting small, just like everyone starts with baby steps, but showing them this is why you need your computer science course. This is why you need to focus on your math. It's growing, it's exploding, and you can be a part of the mission, whether you're in Nigeria or in Florida or in Australia. There's a place for you in space.
Absolutely. And I think it's kind of key to talk about how much space is going into non-traditional space industries. And I think people sort of they take it for granted, you know, how much we use space, if it's financial transactions every day, it's your cell phone, it's your television. But I'm seeing more and more companies thinking about how they can use Earth observation as perfect examples. You're talking about Nigeria. In farming, for example, in rural Africa, to be able to watch climate change, to be able to figure out what kind of your soil needs are, when's the best time to go out and seed your crop. So, you know, it's amazing to see that transition. Liz, are you finding when you're teaching these educators that you're prepping them for the thought of space being part of non-traditional space industry as well? I mean, a really good example of that is always McDonald's. McDonald's actually uses Earth observation to monitor their cattle. People don't think of a fast food chain using space, but you know, are you finding that you're prepping these teachers to know that space doesn't necessarily have to be that it's just rocketry? It could be very non-traditional areas as well.
Definitely. And especially when we're talking about satellites, all the different reasons that we have satellites, all the ways they can be used. And people in farming already understand this, right? They're already working with drones. And so it makes sense. We're really excited about the coming commercial space stations, right? Blue Origin announced that they are bidding for a contract. Maybe they've even been selected, right? There will be selection. I think they're in the bidding process. And there are at least 3 other strong competitors, right? So let's understand what these commercial space stations will be for, what kind of work can be done there. There's a lot of interest in biology and what kind of biological work can be done. Also, computing, data storage, and anything that generates too much heat or is bad for the Earth, but perhaps could be done in space. So yeah, it's just a wild time to think about what could be done and then find out who's already working on it and start to get involved.
I'm just reading in the chat. We've had quite a few questions. I'm trying to make sure I keep across them all. One of the questions is about remote virtual jobs. Definitely an interesting question. Remote jobs in space is kind of difficult when it comes to a lot of things, but I work remote in communications, and there's certainly opportunities out there. I just want to throw that out to a lot of the students that are watching, and feel free to reach out to us all on LinkedIn. I think Liz was mentioning earlier about how important LinkedIn is as a tool to be able to find jobs. And if you want to know about how to prep your LinkedIn profile, Izzy House from the Global Spaceport Alliance did a really good presentation on that in the first of the webinar series. So I encourage you to go back and watch those videos and learn about how you can make sure you capitalize on that profile and get the best out of that opportunity. Rani, I'd love to talk a little bit more about the kind of companies that you work with that might not necessarily be the Virgin Galactics that get the glamour, that come in and maybe do smaller work. You know, how are you encouraging the smaller startup companies to work with places like Spaceport America?
And we have like one of the things I mentioned briefly was like these they're called HAPs, high altitude platforms. And so we have companies like Aero Environment and other companies along those lines that are flying these, and they are doing works like satellites, because these are, unmanned aircraft. They go up to about 60,000 feet and they can be up there for months. And so they do the same type of work as satellites. So we do have, I think, 3 different companies here at Spaceport that does that type of work. We do different types of testing. We even had like car engine testings and that at the spaceport as well. And we also, we do have vertical launches that come up from spaceport as well. There's a company that works with us, Up Aerospace, and they do, send up rockets vertically. Again, they're not going to go orbital, but we do work with suborbital vertical flights as well.
Really key. You know, there's opportunities there for biomedical. I know we've hit on, there's opportunities there for climate change monitoring. There's definitely a lot of things that are going on. I'm going to throw this question out to the entire group, and I will go around and point to you all individually. But, you know, what are your main things that when people come to you and say, I want to work in the space industry, what are your main things that you give to them as advice? Because I think that's what a lot of these students are looking for. I'll start with you, Trish.
I would say that if I just draw my own past, it's taken me a long time to get here to aerospace, and I never really thought that I would be in this industry when I first started my career. So sometimes patience and perseverance is your friend. To know that if you're following your passion in the industry you want to be in, the type of job you want to be in, the type of study you want to be in, just keep focusing on how this can relate to aerospace. And keep collaborating with other people. It's a small but growing group of individuals, and we're all open to help each other succeed.
Absolutely, very key. And I would encourage you to start looking out for all of these speakers in the panel and reach out to them and network. Don't just add them as a friend on LinkedIn. Write to them, introduce yourself, ask questions. I think that's really important. Ken, what would you say to someone? What advice do you give?
Well, you know, the patience obviously is absolutely right. Enthusiasm is one. I mean, I've talked to a lot of people that said, you know, I had a bunch of candidates coming in and talking, you know, this one, a bunch of them just wanted a job, but, you know, here were the ones that were like, have been a member of a rocket club or have been watching this, you know, just totally into it kind of thing, which is, you know, you tend to want to get the people that are enthusiastic, that'll, you know, that see this more than just a job. It's a calling, right? A lot of times people say, oh, you know, space is special, you know, and it really isn't, right? I mean, there are people that love cars as much as we love space, right? So space is not special necessarily, but you know, people will want to be around other people that, you know, are into Star Wars and into Star Trek and believe in the dream and, you know, have the ideals. And so, you know, I would say enthusiasm, and again, I'm Mr. Enthusiasm, so I would say enthusiasm is really important. But I would also say, and I saw some in the chat, yeah, it's hard to get a job, and companies spend a lot of time because it costs a lot of money to hire somebody. So they really, really pick you when they're hiring people. So it's really a hard thing to do. These days, you can start your own space company. Now, I wouldn't necessarily say to do that if you've never done space before or if you've never done business before. I do tell a lot of students, hey, if you want to start a space business, but you've never been in business before, open something like a pizzeria. You know, do something where you know where the market is. Do something where you're going to learn the business skills, make your first million selling pizzas, and then, like Elon or like Jeff, then start your space company. Now you know about business as well, because engineers think they're this, you know, they're the smartest people in the world, but then they sit down and start dealing with accountants and lawyers and stuff, and it's it's driving me nuts. So, you know, I would say, you know, starting your own company is also an option, and this is the latest trend. And so there's a lot of finance for it out there. So if you've got a good idea, or you can glob onto other folks who do have a good idea, that's another way to do it.
Absolutely. And we did cover entrepreneurship as well in this webinar series. So again, I encourage people to go and look at that. We went through all of the different opportunities for financing out there. Kaci, what would be your key give to people when they ask you about starting a career in space?
I'll definitely have that passion. Absolutely. As Ken mentioned. But also just read and watch videos, learn as much as you can, because you'll go down these rabbit holes where you didn't know. I had no idea 3 years ago that this even existed behind me, this Limitless Space Institute. And then I learned that they're focused on supporting laser propulsion and nuclear to electric. And it just opened my eyes to all of this whole new perspective of space and exploration and power and propulsion. It's like, oh my gosh, we can do this. And so it just reignited my passion to like next level, achievement unlocked. So just keep learning, keep your mind open, and talk to as many people as you can, because the networking is just incredible.
Research really is key, and there's so many different opportunities out there to get space news. There is spacenews.com, there is newsletters like Payload, there are daily podcasts like T-Minus Space. There are definitely opportunities out there for people to learn a lot about what's going on in the space industry. Liz, what are your encouraging words for people that when they come to you and say, I want to work in space?
Two things. One, go to a space conference, and some really good ones for people who don't know much about the industry, or either ISDC, the International Space Development Conference, which is usually Memorial Weekend, but next year it's going to be mid-June. And the other one that is really good for people who want to just see the breadth of everything, Space Symposium, which is in Colorado, usually in April, mid-April. The other thing is, if you are a student, join SEDS, Students for the Exploration and Development of Space. It's a really good nonprofit, really focused on helping college students figure out what they want to do, get internships, get mentoring, and get jobs.
Absolutely. Rani, you got the last word. What's your advice to those that want come to you and say they want to work in space?
I was saying networking and volunteering, because again, you have the research, but it's amazing how many organizations, I can't even keep up with all the ones I want to, be part of, but also volunteering, because the jobs, sort of they come and they go, but when you know people, when you're in one of these fantastic organizations, you start to hear, there's a wonderful organization here in New Mexico called New Space Nexus. I started to attend their monthly meetings and I was scared to death because I thought I'm not anywhere with space, but I wanted to hear, and this was a group that was talking about space, but that was really key to me to meet the people who really got me to where I'm at today. And so again, until you get that job, find one of the organizations that resonate with you, sort of work there, go to their meetings, meet people. So networking and volunteering.
Wonderful. And that concludes this whole presentation, which seems like it went really, really quick. So I want to say a massive thank you to everybody on this panel. And I do encourage people to go back, watch the video again. And as I say, reach out to everybody here. We're all here to help people that want to find opportunities in the space industry. So please do reach out. James, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Well, I think we've had 6 commentaries that I cannot add one word to. That was absolutely super. Thank you, Alice, Kaci, Tricia, Ken, Liz, and Rani as a special guest. That was absolutely terrific. Let me just echo a couple of things real quick. All of these 4 seminars will be available on our website, so feel free to go there and look at them at your leisure. The other thing is, I put my email address in the chat. Feel free to reach out to me personally, and I will do what I can to help steer you in the right direction. Thank you all very much for your attention today and for your participation. And thank you, Jacobs, for being our sponsor. Thank you all. Bye-bye.